Hi, this is Jeff Miller with a Dash of Insight, continuing our series of interviews with Bob Deely, creator of Mr. Model, and we're talking about Mr. Model and the various series of recessions and how the model interacted with picked up the events of the time and how the model gave signals to Bob in real time. So, welcome back, Bob. I think we're talking about the 1970s in this segment.
We are, and as you can see, there are two recessions fairly close to each other. One that started in December of 1969 and ran to November of 1970, which is where you have the pointer right now. And then the next one, which was from 1973 to 1975. And in both of those cases, the model performed exactly as we hoped it would. It gave a lead going through 200, basically starting early in 1968 and then going through zero early in 1969, a considerable length of time before the actual cycle peak was declared. It then made a V as we would expect it to, came back through and went back through 200 until we get into early 1973, in which it uh, repeated the experience.
So, Bob, does it bother you when you get a signal that far in advance of the recession? I mean, this whole chart is 9 months, is moved forward by 9 months. So that really was you would start to worry about the recession quite a while before it really happened.
Well, this is again how we try to interpret the signals. The aggregate spread, as we've covered elsewhere, is the combination of what goes on between the real spread and the financial spread. And what we would have been seeing as the line turned back down through 200 is that those series would have been converging on each other, which makes us worry that the economy is showing signs of imbalance. Those imbalances surfaced in the recession of 1969, which was a fairly deep episode and actually contained one of the few true double dips. The economy had been on the verge of recovering, and then in the fourth quarter of 1970, there was a strike at GM, which turned GDP down and gave us the second leg of the recession.
I see.
In 1973, by contrast, is the famous OPEC recession, which started in November of 1973, but the downturn in the aggregate spread actually began earlier in 1973. And while some people consider to be the OPEC event as what triggered the recession, we actually had laid very, very firm ground upon which to have one, which was the repeal of the wage and price controls that we all have forgotten conveniently in the mists of history, and other elements
Thank you, Dick Nixon.
indeed, and other elements of instability that made that recession possible. That one was long and deep, and as you can see, the aggregate spread went extremely negative before turning around. Actually, it turned around during 1974, showing us that the peak would that the trough would take place in early 1975. We then went back into what you would call the standard expansion configuration, where we're running above 200 before we then get into the really serious double dip of 80 and 81. But we'll talk about that next.
Okay, thank you.